Hello, hi, welcome to the Village of Buchanan, November 24th, 2020 workshop meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America
and to the
republic
for which
for which it stands,
one
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, so tonight's our workshop. We got a lot to cover this evening, a lot going on. And I am going to have Marcus lead us in our agenda this evening. So Marcus, whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. The first thing on the agenda is an update and discussion regarding the overlay district. Mr. Stallman was planning to attend, but he was called out for an emergency meeting. Another one of his clients, he had to attend that meeting. So I'll let Nick explain where we are. And I emailed the board some documents over the weekend. Hopefully everybody received that. Nick, if you want to, whenever you explain anything, if you want to bring up anything on the screen, I can do that as well. So I'll let you, Nick, do it now.
No, I'm not. I did give you the Calabro maps, those maps for the other item, but for
Yes.
I don't think there's anything you need to put up on the screen. I assume everybody has the paperwork, but if not, you can put it up on the screen.
Sure,
So basically, since we last discussed this, I did spend some time going over things with the planner, and some of it was in response to questions that we came up with in our meeting as what happens with lots that are not 40,000 square feet. 40,000 square feet is a lot that's a little less than an acre. An actual acre is 43 and change thousand square feet. But our zoning guides generally use 40,000. I'm not sure why that's the case. Nice round number. But anyway, we talked about what could like if lots over 40,000 square feet or more could do the some of the things that we're suggesting, the 3 stories, the 6 townhouses per acre. If it's an apartment building, up to 12 units per acre. What happens with lots that are smaller? So my sense was that you prorate it. You got to have at least a certain size lot, because if you think about that row of 6 private homes or any other situation with private homes, somebody can't just tear down one of those private homes and put up a 3-story building between 2 of those little homes, because the lot's not big enough. So we, in discussion with David, we came up with 25,000 square feet, which is about 5/8 of it, a little more than half an acre. It's about 5/8 of an acre. And just so you have a picture of this, a 1 acre lot would be roughly 200 by 200 feet, or 100 by 400 feet, depending on the shape of the lot. But 200 by 200 would roughly give you an acre. And the lots that kind of come into this 25,000, between 25,000 and 1,000, there's a few. There's only 2 parcels that are multiple acres. That's the vacant lot across from the church that is owned by Carbone, and the vacant lot next to the hardware store that's owned by a company called Gusti Realty. I thought it had been Franzoso. I don't know if that's a shell corporate, if that's one of his corporations, or if he's connected to it, or if he's completely out of that now. I don't know. Do you happen to know, Teresa, if Franzoso still is an owner on that?
I know at one time he had it up for sale, but I don't know. That was a couple
So
of years
it's Gusti, whether somebody bought it from him or this is the name of a corporation that he bought it under, I don't know. But those are the 2 multiple acre parcels. A few parcels that do come in at around 25, between that 25,000 and 1,000 and 40,000 square feet are, should it get improved, the Selix property is 0.6 acres. That puts it right around there. On the corner of Craft Lane and 9A, there's a private lot. There's a home and a store on it currently. The store is vacant. It used to be, I think, a TV repair business or something. But that parcel is 0.6 acres. And there's also a private lot showing on 9A running from Gallagher to Catherine. That's 0.6 acres. If you look on the GIS mapping site, the link is on the village website. You look on there, you can find these lots. There's other lots that come in close to that, around a half an acre, or that are a little bit less than this, like the triangle lot across from the hardware store is only like between 0.4 and 0.5 acres, I think. It doesn't quite make it. The idea then is to prorate. So if on an acre you're allowed 6 townhouses, on a half acre you're allowed 3 townhouses, and you prorate depending on the size of the property. But making 25,000 square feet a minimum property size, it eliminates the chance of somebody putting something that's out of proportion next to a little private home. And this is one of the concerns that came up at one or two of our workshops. So that's one of the changes there, designating those lots less than an acre. I personally think we might want to go to 20,000 feet just to not box in people too much. For example, the lot on White Street where the house was torn down is next to a lot that's owned by the billboard company, who can no longer put up billboards as of about 2006 or 7. And if somebody wanted to buy that property and the billboard property and maybe talk to the homeowner of the one other house that's over there, and if they wanted to put up a few townhouses, that would fall in under this 25,000 square feet. So I personally am thinking I'd like to see it go from 20,000 as a minimum lot size, because otherwise it's eliminating some other medium-sized lots that are bigger than one private home, and kind of boxes in people that might want to buy. Somebody wanted to buy a row of 3 or 4 houses and put them together, like those small houses across from Selix there on 9A. If somebody wanted to buy 3 or 4 lots and do something there, they would still come under that 25,000 square feet, because they're very small lots, even if you bought 3 or 4 of them. So I'm thinking that that maybe I might want to tweak that down to 20,000. Anybody else? We could talk to the planner when he's available, or you guys can weigh in what you think about that. So that's the primary thing that changed. We also have the planner's recommendation that, and if you've all gotten this, have you all seen this map?
Mm-hmm.
That wants to add the this strip here that's opposite Rowlindo, running from Blakely down to White Street. Our village administrator is a magician.
Mm-hmm.
So that strip there, and this was actually mentioned in the master plan, and it's come up before, that those houses just sort of the houses along there got lumped in to that M1 zone, which is heavy industrial. That's where the WIC is. But in order to afford them the same possibilities and offer more opportunity and more protection, to take them out of the M1 zone and include them in the C2, which would then they would fall under the overlay. I mean, the overlay could encompass parts of different zones. So the overlay zone could still incorporate them, but so this would be like a side issue with the board can consider if we want to change the zoning for that little blue strip to be part of the C2 instead of the M1, get it out of that heavy industrial, since basically the only thing that on the lower portion, it's sort of the front entryway into WIC, and it really, it either makes no, it kind of makes no sense there, but where the houses are, going from Blakely down 6, 7 houses, whatever it is there, those might be better suited to be in the C2 zone than in the M1 zone. So that's something else that is being proposed by the planner, that planner suggested. myself, I had a couple of questions. One is, part of the intention here, aside from, the key intention is to encourage some development and shore up our tax base, but to do this in a way that also creates pedestrian appeal and friendliness and, trees, landscaping, sidewalks, whatever, that, how do we encourage that or incentivize that? Is there any portion of that gets written into this, or is that just, this has to be, I think there has to be some reference to that so that when people develop a lot, it's incentivized. The ideal thing is if the village had tons of money laying around, you run a sidewalk and then people can do the landscaping, but maybe we need to, like, if anybody develops a lot, they have to do that section of the sidewalk, and it gets built on piecemeal, and then maybe at some point the village has to fill in between. Marcus,
Nick, that's a perfect example. We have the design guidelines, how the building's supposed to look like, includes lighting, what type of lighting the building has to have, the landscaping, we want to put some trees along that property, that we can include that as part of the design guidelines. And also, you're absolutely right, we can require brand new sidewalks to be put in as well. So all that can be part of the design guidelines. So that would,
so it's still kind of piecemeal because somebody does a lot, and they it's kind of silly. You could do a lot and have a 200-foot sidewalk, and then it ends.
Correct.
There is some sidewalk already on the lower portion, and which basically emanated out of the need to have sidewalks coming in and out of the high school. But for a lot of this stretch, there is nothing, and something like that would, enable, would help to tie things together. And, so somebody could go to one store and then walk, and, could be in one building and walk to another. They could come out of a townhouse and walk to the hardware store, just those kinds of things. So I did not review the design guidelines, which I have here, and let me go back and see what that says about sidewalks, or see if we have to add it or change the wording there. But that was one of the questions I have.
Yep.
And there was in the use regulations, which this, I don't even think it would be beneficial to put it up, Marcus, because you could barely read this, the copy that we got. It's so even if you put it up, you could try putting it up, but I don't know if I don't think
it's tough to read. It's very small print. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. It must be. It seems like it's a PDF that was included in the document. I don't know what it is, but it's hard to read. But anyway, in the use regulations, David added the sections which give you the uses permitted by right, and on the multifamily, again on lots 40,000 feet and above, up to 12 units per acre, up to 3 stories with a 40 height maximum, and it gives a planning board. Planning board's going to be very an essential part of this, because there's going to, the site plans have to be they're the ones that review the site plan, and one thing is, and this was in the code before, so David just well, I don't know, maybe. Okay, so in that section, a lot of the wording in this is just what was in the code before. And you see at the bottom, it says planning board, notwithstanding the above, love that word, notwithstanding the above, at the sole discretion of the planning board, a number of this is designed for 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, but the planning boards at their discretion can go up to 20% 3-bedroom units. So there's a lot, while we're trying to change what's allowed over here, there's still a lot to be done by the planning board and site plan approval process. That's one thing there for the planning board. Another thing is, if you go, let's see, I'm not sure if it's in this next section here. Okay, yes, at the bottom of this B section, this is talking about what was allowed before was the 2-story buildings with stores below and apartments. above or behind. And David, I think, just brought forward that wording. And the old wording was, no more than 50% of the total floor area may be utilized for residential purposes. That makes perfect sense if you've got one floor of stores and one floor of apartments. But if you're going to allow 3 stories, the 50% figure no longer makes any sense. And I think it was just just an error of omission.
Yep.
Because if you're going to allow 3 stories, then 2/3 of the floor area can be residential, not 50%.
Correct.
So we need to adjust that in there. I will, we'll have to relay that to David. And that's just because he carried that wording over from what was in there before and missed that detail. And again, and then the last thing is townhouses. Again, this is the same wording that was there before. We used to allow 5. We're just changing it to 6 per acre or 40,000 square feet, and prorating for lots between 25,000 and 40,000. So, just proportionate. So if you have a half an acre, you could do 3 units. I'm thinking that 25,000 is, again, I said I'd put favor going to 20,000 because that would open up a few other large lots that come in just under that. And let's see. Another thing question I had was that in the bulk regulations, the planning board at its discretion can allow up to 75% lot coverage. If you look at some of the older buildings, like around the Village Circle and some of the older commercial buildings, you got a little commercial building and then it's paved on the side with a parking lot in the back. And they've got their lot coverage is often much higher than the standard around the village of 30%. So because of the way we're talking about trying to bring buildings forward and having parking behind, you're going to, depending on the lot may have 2 or 3 acres of woods in the back that are not even going to get developed, and it becomes a moot point. But for certain lots, you need to allow a larger lot coverage, and the planning board can go up to 75%. So, part of the purpose of all this is to streamline the process. So, if you've got to go to the zoning board and get approval for that lot coverage, and then you got to go back to the planning board for this process, and, and then if let's say you buy individual lots and you want to merge them, part of the wording in David's document allows for, that the planning board can approve the plan. I don't remember the exact wording. It's in the 6-page or 7-page document that David said. There's some wording regarding lot mergers. So if somebody were to buy 2 or 3 lots, then they don't have to go through a whole thing to merge the lots, and then they don't have to go through a zoning board process and then a planning. You want to eliminate obstacles where it makes sense. So I think that's it. We've discussed the what this is all about before. I would say basically we have to think about the history of what I've seen here in the village, and from as early as I've been involved in the village, people have been talking about, there's no business in the circle anymore. It's people come in this way from the village, it's kind of shabby. If it's, I remember when I was first on the board and Sean Murray was mayor, there was talk about getting somebody to be a business liaison and trying to encourage some business development. It's always been there. It's always been an issue. I haven't seen one concrete thing proposed, and I got to say, I think this is a concrete proposal. So if after the number of years we've all been here, and there hasn't been any other concrete proposal, I say that this really needs to be pursued. The board can then review periodically and say, you know what, that's working great. That's not working. Let's tweak this. But I think we need to get something on the table here, and do whatever makes the most sense to us right now, because otherwise we'll be talking about it for more years. And we're in a situation now where we cannot afford to let the tax base lapse. So Marcus has indicated that some developers have reached out to him. I'd like to do this over there, or, you know, I mean, there are people that will do things, you know, so that's it. That's my spiel. Anyone else want to say anything or have any questions?
Nick, yeah, I wanted to say something. I know you mentioned something about lot mergers, but that, my understanding is if you own one lot and then you purchase another lot in the same name, doesn't that lot automatically, George, correct me, or Stephanie,
Well, here's
automatically merge?
that. I've been looking over the zoning book in general because there's a lot of things that have to be tweaked in my mind. There's a lot of badly worded things. There's outdated things. And one of the things I was looking at, because in relationship to the item we're going to discuss next, I've been going over some of the older non-conforming lots in the older part of the village, these small lots. For most of the zones now, you need your lot requirements are 100 feet deep and 75 feet wide. That's the R 7.5 zone, the is there an R5? I think it doesn't change until you get to the R20. I got to look back. But anyway, a lot of the old village lots are only 40 feet wide, 50, 60 feet wide. They're non-standard lots. They're non-conforming lots. And the code has a section that says if non-standard lots are owned in the same name, they automatically merge. I don't think we've done that. There are a lot of people who have, if you look at the village GIS mapping site, there's a lot of people whose homes are on two small lots, which technically should be merged into one. I just scrolling around found about 8 cases of this on Tate Avenue, on 4th Street, on Lindsay. It's very common, and you'll see it'll show 2 separate lots, and the house will be all on one in some cases. It'll be half on one, half on the other in other cases. So I don't know what that means. That's a separate issue. But to answer your question, Teresa, the only wording I found was that if they're non-conforming lots, conforming lots don't automatically merge. So in this case, what we're talking about are often lots that are 50, 60 feet wide. And if they were owned by the same person, they would automatically merge. I don't think it happens as soon as they buy them. I seem to remember this coming up once when I was on the zoning board, but that it was like after 1 year or something. So I have to go back and revisit that wording. But non-conforming lots would merge. Conforming lots, unless there's something in the code I haven't seen, I don't believe they merge automatically. But you know, if you wanted to buy lots, let's say somebody was buying 2 or 3 lots from different people, you know, if they have to go through a part of the process to merge those lots and then go to the zoning board and then go to the planning board, the whole idea is to craft something. You know, you're not going to just give people carte blanche, but craft something with appropriate regulations, but eliminate some of those restrictions. That's actually part of the purpose of this, to streamline and the process in certain cases.
Any other comments from any board members? Anything you'd like to ask? Unfortunately, the planner isn't here, but.
Yeah, I've got a question, Nick. I mean, I think I agree with you certainly on the 20,000 number. I think that's a good place to start at, to give some flexibility to the overlay zone. You mentioned something about the lighting earlier. Now, were we talking about the street lighting, or you said lighting in reference to?
Well, Marcus mentioned.
Yeah, there's two different. Dwayne, good point. There's 2 different types of lighting. One is the lighting on the building itself. So you know, some lighting have a gooseneck lighting that points at the sign of the of a business. So that's part of the design guidelines, as well as if you want any street lights outside, it's specified possibly LED lights, dark sky, all that. It'll be part of the requirement as well.
Okay.
This was from David, draft
Yes.
design guidelines. Does everybody have that?
Yeah, I have it.
Yep.
So I'm pretty sure that all that stuff is referenced in here. I didn't really get into the design. I haven't reviewed this in a while. We've had it for several months.
Yeah.
But
Okay. No,
I'll
my
take a look at
question
it. And,
was whether, we were talking street lighting or facade lighting or, on that stuff.
Right.
Okay.
right.
The other thing, and we spoke about this before, was the size of the apartments, meaning the bedrooms. And it said that we might want to tread easy on the 3 bedrooms. And then now you're saying in our existing code, it's up to the discretion of the planning board whether they would permit 3-bedroom apartments over the top of these commercial.
Yeah. Well,
buildings.
what's in the code is that the apartments have to be a minimum of 750 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that what's allowed are 1 and 2 bedroom. Where am I? Sorry. One and 2 bedroom apartments. This wording is kind of blurry, but there is a note that's been in the code that says that it's the sole discretion of the planning board that a number of dwellings not to exceed 20% of the total. So that would mean if there were 10 units, you could have 2 3-bedroom. That's at the discretion of the planning board.
And so we would leave that in there, and it would thus apply to the overlay zone.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. That's what's in there now, and unless there's a consensus or a reason to change it, I mean, I think I don't know if we can exclude them. If we want to exclude them 100%, maybe we could change the number. I don't know.
No, I mean, I know in some of the earlier discussions there was some thought that we capped that at 2 bedrooms, and that 3 bedrooms would take us into a more idea about the school system and that type of thing.
Well, the code is written for 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, but the planning board can, at its discretion. Now, I don't know what the planning board takes into account there. Whether is it the planning board's job to look at it in terms of density, in terms of parking?
Mm-hmm.
Is the planning board's responsibility to look at it in terms of school population? Truthfully, I think that they can think about it in terms of school population if they want, but that's probably not what the intent is. The intent is more in terms of planning and density and parking and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, if you're gonna go for 1 and 2 bedroom, you're talking about singles and couples, maybe a mom or dad with a kid, but generally, if you've got a couple with 2 or 3 kids, you're pretty much excluding them. And do we want to? I don't know. I mean, that's.
And just one more point too, just so everybody knows, a lot of developments I've seen so far, the 3 bedrooms, the 3rd bedroom tends to be turned into a den or an office these days as well. But but you can't guarantee that, absolutely. Yeah. But a lot of those are turning into, especially during these days now, they have an office, like everybody's home now on Zoom. So a lot of people are looking for 3 bedrooms just to have a home office these days.
Sure. And speaking for myself, like my wife and I live on 3 stories. So, we can spend time together, and we can also totally ignore each other for hours. I mean, some people live in small condos and apartments. That would probably drive me nuts. I'd probably want the extra room, whether it was for an office for music, for crafts, like my wife has sewing set up in one room, that kind of thing. So
my last question is just basically one of the things that we had talked about before was the idea of the lots that you talked about earlier, the non-conforming lots, and how we kind of bring that together, and that's pretty much going to be on a case-by-case basis because each lot is going to be different, and if people want to bring that 3 lots together and how that might work out, I think the protections that we put in place in terms of not having, like you say, a 4-story, not a 4-story, but a townhouse with 4 or 6 or 8 dwellings next to one of those small homes that we know exist, and able to protect them. And I want to definitely make sure that those type of things, security, safety measures are in place.
And there's another part of this that actually David changed. I was looking at the original draft for the overlay versus what he sent us this week. And there was another change in there that I just caught. And basically there was the original draft said that the minimum front yard setback may be reduced to 20 feet. Some of the older commercial buildings along 9A are only 15, 20 feet from the property line. But if you can remember what we said about that Travis Avenue apartment that we're talking about next, that if you have a vacant lot next to developed lots, you could build something as long as your front setback is equal to the greater of the 2 properties to your sides. And David incorporated something like that in here, and I don't remember if we discussed that or if he just decided it would be a good idea.
I don't recall.
So, but he now changed it to, you could have a 20-foot setback too, when a parcel is situated between 2 improved lots, developed lots, each having a principal building within 20 feet of the side lot lines, the front yard on the parcel may be reduced to a depth equal to the greater of the front yard setbacks of the 2 adjoining lots, which is basically the same principle as what's in the code for undeveloped lots and what we'll be talking about with our next issue. But that requires a 20 feet on the side. Our standard side lot requirement in the village is 10 feet. So if somebody is going to develop between existing buildings, it requires that there's a 20-foot setback. We can have, so there's some protection written in that way. And since we decided to go from 4 stories to 3 stories, the most you could have is something 1 story above what is the normal allowance in the village. And again, just so people, in case anybody's listening, and not to let people get confused, this only applies to the C1, C2 area along 9A. It does not apply to any place else in the village. Nobody's putting 3-story buildings next to your house on Catherine or Seward Street, or Henry, or Burke Court, or anywhere else. It's only that this one the commercial corridor there. So yeah, we did. That's, I know you were part of the discussion and concerned about that, and we were looking at different lots and how to protect existing homes, and that's where we came up with the minimum lot size. So you can't just do it on one of these substandard lots that's 50 by 100. You can't put up a 3-story building. Period.
Okay.
You would have to buy up about 4 of them in order to be able to put 3-story something. And then you still have the increased side yard setback, so you're not right on top of somebody and casting a big shadow. And we could check how that's worded to make sure there is protection on the sides should somebody do this.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a comment in the chat box from Harmon. Harmon is one of our new zoning board members, and he's on with us tonight. So his comment is, Regarding three-bedroom or strain on the school system, has the school board been reached out to for population capacity? I understand enrollment has been down and there is space based on a budget discussion over the summer. And yes, I have heard that also, especially when you go out to Furnace Woods. I'm understanding class size is about 10 to 12 kids.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good point.
Excuse me, is enrollment down because of COVID? Like
No.
I think it's the cohort of the population that we have in the village and at this particular time, because that's going to go up and down. I mean,
Yeah.
25 years ago, you come in with kids.
The trend, I mean, a lot of young people are not rushing to get married these days.
Yeah, it's like I say, the
So I think
cohort
it's
is
a lot
down.
Social dynamics, and like if you look at the census from the 30s or 40s in the village, and a lot of the houses have 3, 4 kids, 5 kids. It's pretty rare now to see people with more than 1 or 2.
Well, if I can just speak anecdotally and use, Lake Drive as an example of the recent transactions with the who's bought homes and how they came in. And over the last 5 years, we had 3 houses change hands, and those 3 new owners, none of them came in with kids 5 years ago, whereas now all of them have children. So, it's
it's anecdotal. It's interesting anecdotally, but it's very hard to predict what's going to happen now.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
One of the consequences of what the trend will be now is that companies will have a larger number of people working from home on a regular basis. That frees up people who can work from home to leave the city, say people that lived in the city. And they say, like housing prices are very strong right now in the suburbs up and north of us as well, because people working remotely are saying, screw it, let me just, get a nice place to I'm working on my computer anyway. So it's hard to predict where the dynamics are going to go, but it would seem that the housing market's going to stay strong. There's definitely a demand for housing. And, it's hard to predict. Are people going to, there's lifestyle decisions and economic decisions when it comes to kids, and how many to have, and whether or not to have kids. So it's anecdotes, I find them fascinating, but it is kind of hard to predict where this is going to go. But it's interesting that right now enrollment is down. And I'm sorry, Teresa, the gentleman, Harmon's question is, we did not reach out to the school.
Correct.
But we do,
need to.
but,
I'll contact the school superintendent.
Yeah, I mean, as the liaison to the
All right, yes,
education
Dwayne, if you-
committee, I'll follow up on that.
Perfect. Thank you.
yeah, I'd be curious to see what they have to say, and,
Sure. No, one of my last conversations did talk a little bit about that, and that was, pre-COVID. So, I'll circle back and bring that back to the board.
yes. And if somebody puts up, a 30 apartment building in one of those larger lots or something, they're going to be paying taxes to the village, and they're going to be paying taxes to the school district. I mean, it basically, they go on the tax rolls right now. Whatever they're paying as a vacant property is pretty negligible.
And just at that point, we're going to the school district. It's a good point. If the village board does decide to move forward, there's a whole public hearing process. You have the planning board will have to have written comments. The county will have written comments, and of course, the school or anybody else can also respond and go through that public process. So it's good that if the village board does decide to go through, we can notify the school if they want to provide any written comments as well.
Okay. I'd like to propose that we do whatever, research we want to do, whatever comments, whatever tweaks we want to do, maybe revisit it at the next workshop, and plan on moving to the public hearing for the first meeting, for the meeting in January. Rather than rush it for December, since there's still a few things to tweak, and maybe some reaching out to the school, things like that.
Yeah, I concur.
But I'd like to keep this moving, because we know how easy it is for things to drag out forever.
And Nick, so yeah, just want to make sure you want to ask to call for a public hearing at the December meeting for January, or
No,
call
I
for a
wanna-
public
I
hearing
want-
January for February?
Whatever things and questions that came up tonight, possible minor tweaking, be all put into place by the next workshop, and that we go with the public hearing in January.
No, you
No,
have to. You're gonna have to
no.
call. You're gonna have to call for the public hearing in January for February if you want to wait for the next workshop.
Oh, so then in
See what I'm saying?
December, we set up the public hearing for January. Call the
Yeah.
public hearing, at the next meeting, call the public hearing for January. That gives us the next workshop to discuss any tweaks, any information we get from the school district, things like that.
Mhm.
I think there's only some, at this point, minor tweaking, people can, if they think of something else, can email it in, and I'll talk to David meanwhile about that going from 25 to 20,000. For example, that triangle lot across from the hardware store is 0.5 acres. At 25,000 square feet, he doesn't quite make it. He's just under that. But he would make it at 20,000 square feet.
All right. So I want to make sure for the public and for the board. So we'll call you're suggesting for the mayor and the board to consider calling for a public hearing at the December meeting. Then December workshop, we could discuss this some more and have the public hearing in January.
Yes.
Okay. That's what I'm sure.
That's what I'd like to see happen.
Well, I don't see the public hearing closing in one meeting either.
Right.
Oh, it doesn't have
It's gonna be
to.
a continuation. And I still want to comment and say, you know, I know we're looking for development for our tax base, but I'm still not thrilled with the west side of the road. On the east side, the side of the hardware store, really behind that, it's Con Edison property, it's wooded property. So the height, just everything doesn't affect more into the residential area on the west side. That's just my thoughts.
Yeah. But the larger lots to be developed are on that
Yeah,
side.
correct, yes. Mhm.
This would just open up a couple of possibilities for lots that are maybe developed now, but they're underdeveloped or they're falling apart. Including White Street, where we took down that house.
Mhm.
That's 2 vacant lots there, and with one other property, it's, I think that there would always be the planning process. We have to make sure that we have the protections written in here, so you're not, there's not a lot of houses there.
No, there isn't, but I still,
you
down
got-
the road, I want
Yeah, like there's
Protect
a house
that
between,
side of the road character of the village more.
yeah.
So are we talking about hundreds of apartments on 9A now? What kind
Well,
of,
nobody's come in
what
with a
kind of a-
proposal.
what kind, if we open this up, what kind of a quarter maximum quantity we're talking about here?
Well, let's see, I'm not sure with that property by the hardware store, there's only 2 big properties. There's the one across from the church, and there's the one near the hardware store. The one near the hardware store has constraints because, you got a flat area that, from the hardware store running north, but I'm not sure how deep you can go because you get into the hills.
Let me ask the one across from the church, how many apartments are gonna be in that?
What's the potential? What's the potential mass
What's the
there?
potential? Let's see, that property, how big is that property?
Well, we could always discuss it at the next workshop because we're already an hour into this.
Oh, by the way, there is one other property I forgot to mention, that's 0.8 acres, and that's the lot that the village owns up there on Blakely and 9A.
Mhm.
That's 0.8 of an acre, so that would be a possible lot that could be developed too. I'm on the GIS mapping site now. Let me see, how big is that? How big is that property? Let's see.
I can't see me. Did you take your pills? Yeah. Okay, you gotta turn around because I can see.
All right, so that property is 3.6 acres. So, if you were allowed 12 per acre, you're talking about about 42 apartments would be allowed as the max, because it's 12 per acre. Now, would he, I don't know what's behind him. I think there's some wetlands down there. I'm not exactly sure. But just based on the acreage, that doesn't mean he's going to apply for that. It doesn't mean the planning board has to approve it. Yeah, I suppose by right, he would be allowed 12 times 3.6, 42, 43.
Yeah, that's wetlands. There's some, I believe, some Con Edison overheads there, and there's also like a little lake almost there.
Yeah, there's
Down where
something
the
there.
school bus depot is, the area you're talking about.
Right. But I mean, I've never seen any. I know he's talked about developing it, but I've never seen anything. I don't know what's on his mind these days. It's not somebody when I was first thinking about this, I just asked him if he had any ideas, any thoughts on it, and he said he thought it would be a good idea, but I never really had any follow up with him.
Okay.
Okay, so we can ask David basically to give us a max to answer Rich's question
Yes, that'd be.
based on
Yeah.
the information.
Yeah, and because I like the property by the hardware store is it's like 5.25 acres, but a lot of that wraps around the back of the hardware store. To me, he can develop along the road, the areas that are along the road, but I don't know if he can get back up in there. He'd be, building right up against the power lines and stuff. So I'm not, the question is how many acres they have versus how many acres they could build on. And I'm a little unsure, exactly what he could fit on the buildable portion,
Yeah, you have to include,
houses up on the power lines.
well, just to remember, you have to include any parking lots, the height of the building, steep slopes, all that. It's going to be hard for anybody to determine how many apartments you can bring in unless you do a site plan for every single lot. And if it's wetlands on top of that subtracts as well. So I don't know how even Dave can tell you what that number would be, because we don't know what the usable land would be. And then with the usable land, how much has to be used for landscaping and plantings and parking lots and driveways and everything else. So just want to bring that up, because if you bring back to David's going to be scratching his head, not knowing how he can estimate that number.
Well, yeah, because we need that, because we're talking about the population density then is going to increase rapidly. Then you'd also have traffic, which is going to be probably not common to anything else around here. Because you have
Yeah, I think you do have to do traffic. Every site requires a traffic study as well.
Right.
My is that the simplest and wisest thing would be to create the center turning lane, because a lot of times the traffic is because people can't turn. If you were able to, if you incorporated a turning lane at the key turning points, so that cars are not in the main lane of traffic, you have a way to let the traffic keep moving while people are poised for turning. So, but the traffic study is part of the site plan approval process as well.
Correct.
And if the planning board says it's going to be too backed up right there, we're going to have to, we're going to need a turning lane. And Marcus, how does that work? It's not because the developer is not the person that's going to go ahead a turning lane. How does that work? They have to get.
Well, you got two things. Teresa hit the nail on the head. Is DOT. So a traffic study has to be done, submitted to the DOT. But the DOT does not want to see traffic backed up on their right of way as well, their road. So the DOT will be involved. I'm sorry, the DOT will review it. The DOT will comment, and the DOT have to provide permission on top of an escrow account set up for us to hire our own traffic engineer to review this process as well. So there's a lot of hurdles to pass if you want to put a lot of units in here. There's a lot of supervision, a lot of overview that has to take place.
Rich, for example, when the gas station went in on Tate and 9A, there was a site plan approval process. I was on the zoning board at the time. I know that they came to us first for some variances and sign size and things like that. But in conjunction with that, there had to be a traffic study. And as a result of that, the light was changed so that there's a separate light when you come out of the gas station.
Who paid for the traffic study?
The developer.
Developer? Okay.
The developer pay for that. The developer also pays for the village traffic engineer to review what they're planning to do as well.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's part of the planning process. And you know, I think the turning lane would solve a lot of it.
Nick, can I ask you one quick question?
Of course.
Yeah, just the thing with like what Rich was saying with the apartments, would that also include then that you would have to have, like, for each apartment an individual parking space on site?
The code requires, I think, two parking spots per unit.
Oh, okay,
And we're
okay.
trying to get that behind. Now, if somebody was putting up a building, they could have a basement level parking. Or in the case of that Carbone property, it slopes down. So he could conceivably have his 3
Underground.
stories and have a parking level
Underground.
underground.
Yeah, okay.
I guess that would be a possible
Yeah, I'm
solution.
just curious, just to eliminate,
Or
you
lots-
know,
yeah.
parking
Yeah.
congestion on streets
Yes, you
and
do have to
whatever
have
else.
parking, and in order to avoid, you know, looking at parking lots, that's
Mm-hmm.
the idea of keeping things a little closer to the road and getting the parking behind.
Correct.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other comments on this subject? Anyone else want to comment? Questions? While we're still on the 9A corridor, Marcus, what is the status of the sidewalk that we put the grant in for?
Oh, George is on the line. George can provide some update on that as well. George?
Update, George Palmer, our engineer.
George, we wanted to see the baby, not you. Where's the baby?
Everybody does. I'm second now, all the time. What are you gonna? Yeah.
I feel your pain.
Yeah, we did a layout of the sidewalk. We've been trying to work with the shoulder area there between the gas station and Relindo, and fit it in the best place possible. I think we sent Marcus a layout last week. Do you have that layout that we sent, Marcus?
It was last week. I have to dig it up, but go ahead. Keep on explaining it.
Yeah, so we sent out the layout, and I think we navigated around the utility poles, the getting curbs and putting in drainage. There's an old stone culvert that goes under the road, so we're going to have to connect to that. And we're at the point the DOT wanted to put in the sidewalks and everything, and they kind of stopped us and said you need to do a drainage study. And then we did our layout. We found that there's all the drainage over the slope, over the embankment and down towards the culvert. So now we have to put in a little bit of drainage and then present that to them in a study and have them get back to us on it. So that's where we're at now. If Marcus could circulate that layout, and if folks could, if you guys could comment on it.
And the area you're talking about, George, is from the Shell gas station to just before Rolindo's there. There's a area there where the culvert is.
Correct. Yeah, just where the sidewalk ends right now, that 40 or 50 foot stretch, there's a culvert right under the road there. And that's where all the water drains off now. And that's what the concern with DOT was, that we're going to put a curb there and the water's going to start ponding and not go anywhere. So they were right. There's a low spot there, and we have to put some drainage in there. So that's where we're at.
Thank you. Yeah, because I'm just concerned. I don't know if the state's going to run out of money, so we're just trying to get this done.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right, Marcus, on to the next item.
Yeah, the next item is, again, Nick, this had to do with an issue of, we had a meeting with the zoning board regarding a property on Travis Avenue with some issues they have regarding setbacks, and in addition, the person wanted to put in. Nick reviewed the code and realized that it's just a little a caveat in the code that allows you to do what the property owner wants to do as long as he knocked down the entire house and rebuilt it. And Nick and the zoning board members seem to agree that seemed a little strange. So Nick has been working with Stephanie to possibly make some changes to the code to make things more logical. So I'll let Nick explain that. And Nick, if you want me to, I'll bring up the little maps that you brought up as well.
Yeah. Okay, so before we look at the map, the section of the code that was the impetus for this, or the basis for this reasoning, is section 21117, called under front yard exceptions. Excuse me. The standard front yard allowance throughout the village is 30-foot setback from property line, not from curb. A lot of older homes don't conform to that. Anything newly built in the village will conform to that, will be conforming to that, if not more. So 30 feet. But the front yard exception to that requirement is section 21117, and it says a non-improved lot between two developed lots, each having 20 feet to the side lot line. Again, the code on the side requires 10 feet, but this is saying that as long as the adjoining lots have 20 feet on the side, a new building may be located the distance to the front yard line of the greater of the two houses, but not less than 10 feet. And there are houses that are even 5 and 10 feet from the front property line. It's kind of fascinating to look at the different lots around the village on that GIS mapping site. So that's what made us think that we can, whereas the code currently says you may not improve or add to a non-conforming house unless the new parts of the construction conform to the current code requirements. So which means if your house is 15 feet from the front yard line, front yard line sounds like football, but from the front property line, if your house is 15 feet, an older home, and you wanted to do an addition, your addition would have to be 30 feet back. So you'd either have to step it back, or it creates a very, this is be a difficult way to add an addition onto a house if it doesn't line up with the other part of your house. So to allow it for unimproved lots, vacant lots, which means somebody could tear down their house and do that, but not allow it for houses that are standing, seems unreasonable. So if you look at the Marcus, you put up the first.
Yeah, which one do you want?
Yes,
which
the first one? Go down. Yes, the one with the Calabro property there.
There we go.
Can you shrink it just a little bit so we could see the lots to the left and right of it? Yeah, maybe just blow it up a touch, depending on the screen people are on.
Let me know. Is that okay?
Anybody on a phone with this meeting, or is everybody on a locked device?
Everybody seems to be logged in. There's no phone calls.
Oh, okay. All right. So, all right. So I wrote in red numbers that I estimated. I used I printed out. Can everybody see me?
Yes.
In a little screen? Okay.
Oh, no,
So
I don't know if people can everybody see Nick, or they see just the map?
they just see the map and you.
Yes.
Okay. That's okay. So this map, basically I printed it
We can
out.
see Nick. Sorry, we can see you, Nick.
You do when I'm talking, you see me?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is my hair all right?
yeah, looks good.
I printed the map out so that if you look at, you see there's a, in the back of the lot is a 50-foot,
That's here?
from property line to property line there, and the property next to it. You see that 50-foot measurement in a few places?
Right here?
So I printed it out so that I adjusted the scale on my printer and printed it out so that 50 feet is exactly 1 inch, and able to use a steel ruler to scale from there. So just estimating visually, because to have the actual figures, you'd have to have a surveyor or an engineer or something. You'd have to have an official figure. But so these are not official figures. These are reasonably close scaled numbers from the map. And so you could see that Calabro's house is only 9 feet plus or minus from the property line at one end and 12 at the other. And the house to the north of him, rather, that's actually to the east of him, is only 12, lot number 45. The house is roughly 12 feet from the property line. And on lot 41, the house is 15 feet. So using this as an example, you see where I drew in the possible addition. I don't know what his plan is, but I just kind of conjectured there. He could do that addition as long as he stays the greater of the two setbacks on lot 45 and lot 41. The greater setback is 15 feet. Now, because this particular property is quirky with the angles and stuff, and the curves on that street, it seems like he would be roughly that same 15 feet at the corner of his addition. The neighbor's house has a big setback from the side yard of 38 feet, so it works. On the between lot 44 and 45, Calabro has about 20 feet, but the other house is very close to the property line, so I'm guesstimating that it's about 25 feet plus or minus between the two houses. So if we change the wording of the code to say that additions may be done, and then change the wording to be more similar to that undeveloped lot wording, he would be able to do this addition as long as he was, that 15 feet matched the 15 feet on the property, lot 41. I think this is, there's a term in zoning called, for minimal conditions, de minimis. You don't deny something based on 2 or 3 inches. You can kind of overlook 2 or 3 inches. So if somebody's supposed to have 30 feet, but it's 29 feet, 7 inches, the zoning board can okay that on a de minimis condition, minimal condition, inconsequential, in other words. So the thing is, if we write the code that you have to have at least, that the neighboring houses have to be at least 20 feet, we're not going to find that too often. So I'm thinking we should instead require that there be 30 feet between the two houses, so that if one house is set in 20 feet and the other one is set in 10 feet, as long as you have a total of 30 feet, I think that would be reasonable. In this particular case, he doesn't even have 30 feet on the right side. So we would have to, maybe include something that gives the zoning board the discretion to, either we give the zoning board discretion to go less than 30 feet down to a certain number. In this case, it's 25 feet. Maybe we go with 25 feet. Or we change the wording that if it's not, so if it's not the side you're doing the addition on, that you only have to have that 30 feet on the side where you're doing the addition, because otherwise you can't correct the pre-existing condition between the two houses, between lot 44 and lot 45. And this is, so maybe we just have to require that there's a minimum of 30 feet between the buildings on the new construction side. Could you bring up the other map, please, Marcus?
Yeah.
Okay, I found this situation in a lot of places around the village, but you can just zoom in on that red area there a little bit. Okay, I'm up. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so here's another situation. 3 houses, pretty close to their property lines. You see on Lindsay Avenue here, lots 7 and 8. There's a total of 10 feet between the houses, roughly. And, the current code requires 10 feet for each house, which would give you 20 feet between the houses. They don't have it there. And then between lot 8 and 9 is 14 feet. So to require, like with the undeveloped lot, that that the houses are at least 20 feet from their property line, you're not going to get that with a lot of the older homes. So this wording is going to not necessarily help everybody. But if you look at lot 9, they have 25 feet to their sideline on the bottom of the house there. If you see where I wrote that in, so they could conceivably, let's say if we required that you keep 30 feet between the houses. Right now there's a total of 40 feet, so they could conceivably bump out about 10 feet. So they could do something there, that lot number 9, But lot number 8 basically can't go anywhere because it's too close to the sideline. They, so writing this into the code is going to help certain situations. I mean, look across the street, lot 26. They've got tons of room to their sides. If they wanted to do an addition, they would easily meet the requirement. But the lots, these 3 lots that I marked in red with the dimensions, there's not too much that can be done there. Lot 26, tons of room. The lot to the north, lot 6 to the what way is that facing? That's facing north, I guess. Lot 6 could possibly have a little room to do something, but a lot of lots still would not be able to do anything. And people on non-conforming lots have done additions that conform to the new setbacks. So, maybe by going, if they have the side lot clearance, they can go back. That lot number 8 has 40 feet to his property line. He could conceivably come forward 10 feet and still conform to the new code. So there's, it's going to apply to different houses in small ways. In some cases, it will offer no relief to some of the houses, and in some cases, they'll have plenty of room, depending on the lot and the house. By the way, I marked it on here. I'm not sure if you people are familiar with what a flag lot is, but if you'll notice, Marcus, could you just scroll down a little bit on that picture, on that illustration? Yeah, you see lot number 11 behind there. There's a house. The driveway, the driveway comes from Lindsay Avenue between lot 9 and 10. You see where it says row 157, I think it says? That's actually the driveway to get to that other property there. That's a flag lot, and that's something that existed before zoning, which is no longer allowed. You can't, in the old days, you could have had a house on a big property. You could have built another house behind your house for your son and his wife, or your daughter and her husband, or something, and you could have given them a driveway down the side of your property. Flag lots are not allowed by current zoning. Otherwise, just about every house with a deep lot on Seward would be able to put another house behind their house, and that would start to get pretty hideous. But I just thought I'd mark that on there just because I found it interesting. So those of you that are not familiar with the flag lots and what they are, I guess it's called a flag because if you take the shape of that lot plus the driveway, it's shaped like a flag. I don't know. So anyway, if you wanted to look around on the GIS mapping site, you'd find lots of other places where there's similar things, houses crowded together, and the change in this zoning would not necessarily help certain people, but it will help some. So that's about it. Any questions? Do you guys want to do this? I mean, this is what, a way that we can kind of revise the zoning that would help out the people that want to do additions, and if they have a certain amount of space, for the really tight places where the houses are crowded together, people are not going to suddenly be able to expand. But for houses that have some room, it would take away that part of the code that says under no circumstances can you do something like this on an older non-conforming lot. And
Hey,
this
Nick?
is,
Nick, you got a good idea.
Yeah.
I'm for it.
Hey, Nick,
yes, Stephanie?
just one question. I think we were going to also make it, you can come closer to the front, to the road, if the home to the left or the right is, to the farthest, but in no event closer than 10 feet, right? We were going to not let homes that are 5 feet away.
Oh, okay, but not closer than 10 feet, yes.
Right.
Yes. Did you draft anything on this, Stephanie?
I
Or
do,
still
I did,
Wait
yep.
to get this feedback?
Yeah, I
Wait
did.
for feedback?
No, I'm going to send it to you. I just wanted to sort of get through tonight to make sure that
Right,
the
right,
board
okay.
wanted me to do more on this.
So what do you think of what I was saying, Stephanie, the wording as far as, if you look at that Calabro property, can you put that back up, Marcus?
Sure.
Or do you have a copy of that, Stephanie? Do you have a copy of this?
I do, yep.
There we go.
Okay, so
I
then,
have it in front of me, but whatever.
okay, so here, Marcus just put it up again. So
Okay.
you see how on the side where he does not want to build, it's only
Yep.
about 25 feet. On the side where he does want to build, there's a lot more. And I think he's got more property to his sides than a lot of these older lots.
Yep.
You know, so I think that we should word this in such a way that keeping a minimum of 30 feet between the two buildings on the side where you're building, but not to suddenly require that he has 30 feet on the side where he's not building, you know? I think in general, you're not going to find, you're going to find a lot of properties that are a lot closer to their sidelines. And so for this to be a general thing that would help people that have the room, you know, this lot 41, you could go ahead and add, and bump out 20 feet if you wanted to based on this. You know?
Yeah, no, I agree.
So on the side where you're not building, I think we, you know, if you're not building on that side, I don't think we change the requirement for what's on that side. We only insist that there be 30 feet kept between the two structures on the side where you are extending your house, on any side that you are extending on, yeah.
So, Nick and Stephanie, let me ask you a question. So would this be as of right, or would this go to the zoning board, and would the applicant need to do a survey to confirm the front and the side yards, to confirm those numbers as part of the survey, so the zoning board to entertain it? Or is it something that'll be as of right?
I actually asked the attorney for Mr. Calabro on this particular application to get a survey from the property, I guess, that's lot 41, because that seems to be, well, yeah.
Okay, well, here's the thing.
Anyway, he's got to do a survey. He's got to get a survey to show us, because Nick is, you know,
Yes.
Nick's got figures there, plus or minus 15, plus or minus 12, but that's sort of not set in
They're
stone.
not official, like I said.
Right. So we want to make sure. So I've already asked him to do that, and I'm, you know.
I don't think anything's going to be off too much, maybe a foot or two, because I just scaled with a steel ruler, and I don't know how accurate this is. So when he gets the full survey, that'll be more accurate. It could vary by a couple of feet. But here's the thing. I did a possible addition there in that dotted line. But what if the addition he wants to do is to add a second story onto a one-story house? Now he's affecting the other side of that property. So that means that if we say you got to have 30 feet between the buildings, he doesn't. He's going to have 25 feet.
So so Nick,
I don't know what his plan is, but we should account for the fact that a lot of people, some people want to bump out, some people want to put a second, you know, turn an attic into a full second floor.
So I think we need to understand better what he's looking to do, and I just want to also say that whatever changes we do, always keep in mind that we want to still maintain the character of the village.
Right.
So
Well, this is not going to allow anybody to do anything that's not allowed in general around the village. What we need to do is do it in a way that helps people that have the ability and the space.
Not every
but
property can
hurt the
do
other.
something. You know, there's certain properties that can do things, and there's certain properties that perhaps they're built right on the line. Perhaps there's you know, not a lot of space, because let's face it, you know, our village has been around for a while, and there's a lot of pre-existing buildings. And I know one of my buildings on Tate Avenue is built on the line, and that's how it was. That's how they did it years ago.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, where the deli was, that's exactly built on the line in the front of the building. That wouldn't be allowed today, but going back, you know, in the 1900s, that was okay. So that we have different phases of building in the village. We have different construction here. We have, you know, there's all different kinds of mix. And as you pointed out with the GIS map, you can see the differences in all the properties. Some have bigger setbacks, some are built on the line, some are, you know, but we don't want to have, I don't know, do I want to say McMansions? We don't want to have things expand so largely that it takes away the character of the village. I mean, but then again, we also want property owners to be able to do things with their homes to improve them. So there's a fine line that you just want to keep your eyes open with everything.
Yeah, I think, you know, whole McMansion thing tends to be houses that are really bursting at the seams. I think by requiring that space between the houses, and keeping the front yard matching the neighboring building, I think you're kind of keeping things. I don't think we're looking at anything that's gaudily out of proportion.
No,
with the code.
I know the
We're
property
still-
we're
we're still
discussing,
subject
I
to
don't
the-
think so, because it's
We're
such
still
a, it's a
subject to the
unique piece
code
of
throughout the
property.
village, which allows 2 stories and a maximum height of 35 feet,
Mhm,
which is basically 2 stories and a peaked roof.
right.
So the more important thing is this is something that the board would be interested in investigating because that way Stephanie can do the research to
Yeah.
get that together.
Okay.
That's the most important
The one
question.
question remains, if somebody's gonna bump out to the side, then they just need that side yard clearance like he has here. But if somebody's gonna add a second story on, currently, any second story additions have to conform to the code too. So, I think we want to, if we say we require 30 feet between the building, I think we either need to, see the case between the lot 44 and 45 here, where there's only 25 feet. So he's still not going to conform to that. So we need to either allow for down to a smaller number for 2 existing buildings, or we have to give the zoning board discretion to give a variance if the space is less than 30 feet and the zoning board feels it there's not an undue impact, that they can go down to 20 feet or something. That give them discretion for existing, not for the new part of the building but where for the existing footprint, to give them the discretion to go as low as 20 feet. Excuse me. When you do a second story, you're working with your existing footprint. When you bump out to the side, you're changing the footprint of your house.
All right, so the most important thing is try to get some draft language so the board can consider
we
and then
need
call.
something.
Yeah,
We need
yeah.
either at the zoning board's discretion, probably the zoning board's discretion, where they can, for the existing footprint, they can go as low as 20 feet. And otherwise, I don't think you're gonna find too many houses in the village. They definitely would never be able to add a second story. They might be able to bump out.
Mhm.
So Nick, let me get this clear. You're saying existing footprint as low as 20 foot to the side yard? The side yard?
Well, I'm saying between the houses, so you can have,
Between
like,
the
the 30
houses.
foot is a total of 30 feet. So if one house has 20 and the other has 10, they make it. If they both have 15, they make it. But require that at least 30 feet between the structures.
Okay.
And again, not less than 10 feet. You still got to keep the 10 feet that's in the code now, but a total of 30 between the buildings. But for the existing footprints, I think maybe we give the zoning board discretion to go as low as 20 between the houses. Otherwise, there's just not going to be any lots that this is going to apply to.
All right, so we can work on this, or we can work on this offline and get some proposed language to the board at a future meetings, so we can move on the agenda, if that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, okay. I mean, Stephanie, if you want, we could talk and then we could draft the language and
Sure.
revisit it.
Thanks
Okay.
for the work you've done with this, Nick. Thanks for,
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, the village board has some questions regarding some of the police reports at the last meeting. So I had Shane provide you some additional details in your package. So if you have any additional questions, please let me know. Any more additional detail, I get it from Shane. So I just want to make sure we didn't lose sight of that, but I know some questions. I don't know if you have any questions now. If not, you can send me an email. I can get you the answers later on if that's okay with everybody.
Well, just one question, the recreational vehicle parking, camping in the park, somebody was like trying to spend overnight in
Yes.
the
Yes,
park,
correct.
okay? And water and storm drain, is that situation on Blakely Avenue we looked at?
Yes. And that's the next, and that's going to be later in the agenda as well.
Okay. And what's the garbage collection violation?
That one, I don't know the detail. I can get you that. I think it had to do with probably putting too much garbage out, but I can double check for that for you.
Yeah. Violation for loose dog.
Yep.
Who are we to judge the morals of dogs?
I think it's a different look dog. See where Nick's
Um,
mind goes.
And
Okay.
in number 8, there's a reference to an illegal apartment. And once again, there's something that we sort of stop, but it's
Yes.
definitely around the village that we need to maybe clear a couple of things off our table and revisit that, it's
Yep.
not the- that's, we really got to find some way to crack down on these illegal apartments.
The new building inspectors have found a few of them already, just to let you know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so let's maybe, some next month or two, do some workshop discussion of that. Maybe
That'd be
bring in- Yeah.
That'll be great.
Yeah.
The next item on the agenda, George is here too. It's a small change order of $3,680. We'll put it on the agenda for approval, but this had to do with, we had to buy a transfer switch that failed in the current pump station that was included as part of the original bid. But that transfer switch was installed to make sure this pump station continues working. It's been down there now in that sewage for some time. So the recommendation is to get a new one to put in a new pump station that will be in better shape and will save the old one for spare parts. And if there's any specific questions on that, George is here too to answer the questions. But it'll be a change order for $3,680 and see if anybody has any questions now. But George won't be at the next meeting, but he can answer any questions now if anybody has any questions.
Is a transfer switch basically just open one valve, close another?
For the generator, correct, George?
Yeah, it's for the generator. It's when the power goes out, it automatically turns on the generator and the pump station.
Okay, I'm thinking of water transfer. It's electric transfer.
Electric, yes,
This is the pump station at the bottom of 4th Street.
yes.
Correct.
And is most of that work the labor of putting it in, or is it a complicated device?
It's basically, it looks like your panel box at your house. It's the same kind of size, except it's one big throw switch. It's got 2 lines going in, 1 line going out, and it automatically flips-flops between one and the other when there's a power loss.
So is most of this price the labor of installing it, or is most of this price the materials of buying the actual switch?
Most of it's the switch, because there was always a cost for the labor in the project. The labor was to move it from the pit
Oh, okay.
to a pit. So this is just actually to buy it, more or less. It's more material than anything else.
Okay.
Okay. So it'll be on the. I'm sorry. Go ahead, George.
It's the same model, same make, same everything. The old one, we thought it would be reusable. It was about 8 years old, and it has a new circuit board in it. So like Marcus said earlier, we're going to keep it for spare parts. It's the same model, same everything. So why not, keep it? So
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, good. So I'll be on the agenda for approval, to approve the change order on that. The next item, you're right, one of the complaints we have on Blakely Avenue, the mayor and myself have received complaints from a resident on Blakely complaining about water coming down onto his driveway from his neighbor's property. Bob is on the line as well to address this as well. It looks like there's a pipe that was installed many years ago from a house, I think about 3 houses above this house, and they put a drain pipe in that run across the village's right-of-way in front of people's properties and then connect it to the storm drain a couple houses further down. I sent the village board some pictures at the last packet to show you how the water is draining. So I know George was involved in this as well, but we had another issue that the property owner was complaining, thought it was coming from his next door neighbor. There was an issue with that, but that was water going onto the street, which I think might be resolved now. There's another issue, another pipe that's coming down the right of way that's actually draining from his property through a pipe onto his neighbor's property to a storm drain further down the hill. So I'll have George and Bob here to just talk about this, and we don't have to answer now, but we need to discuss if we wanted to do anything, leave things the way they are, or tell people to take these pipes out, and then there might be issues on water on those people's property. So Bob, why don't you talk about where they are, water, you were able to find it, and then George, you could talk about maybe any history of that, about that as well. Okay, Bob, you're muted. Take yourself off mute. You're still muted, Bob.
Bottom left.
Yeah, bottom. Yeah, the bottom left. There's still on mic, Bob. You're still
Or
muted.
top right.
There you go.
Oh, it says top right. Mine's bottom left.
There you go, Bob. You're on.
Okay.
Well, what is it you want to know?
Just talk about where the pipe you think it looks like is starting from and how it's draining.
Okay, well, if there's a pipe I'm thinking you're talking about, there's a pipe that goes down from the Stellato property. That's at the base of her driveway. That has been there for as long as I've been in the village, probably a lot longer than that. I'm not sure who installed it, but it just goes down parallel to the sidewalk, under the sidewalk, into, I don't know exactly the address, but it empties out into the base of another individual's driveway, and then catches another pipe on the other side of that driveway and goes into the catch basin. And it looks like to me the reason that was all put there is because the road is slightly higher than the driveway, and these driveways tend to puddle up at the base. If that wasn't there, that would be the problem they have, because we did have to clean that line out one day about a year ago because it was puddling up in a lot of property in the base of their driveway. And I believe the water is really just coming from the property behind it, behind all these houses. There's a lot of rock back there, and I think they just have some water issues that's where it's running. And
Do you think it's just groundwater, or do you think it's just groundwater, or do you think it's attached to a sump pump, or because it seems to be quite a bit of water that comes out of there too?
Well, that water that we've seen coming out into the road with the main problem, that was, right, I believe, coming from that homeowner's basement.
Right. Yeah, it was the house that was flooding the road. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
talking about to the right of that house. That pipe there, does that seem to just be groundwater that's draining into that person's driveway, or does it appear something else is attached to it?
I think that the one that's coming from the Stellato property is really just groundwater, more rainwater. Because right now, with all the rain there, it's dry, it flows where it's supposed to flow. And in numerous properties over on Blakely Avenue do have small catch basins further up on their driveways.
Yeah, what it looks like from the house, each house, it goes underground at some points. When we get into the driveway, there's pipes on both sides, and the water keeps on going from one property all the way down. The person who's complaining now does have a pipe on the other side of his driveway to let the water flow, and you can see it's lined up with all the other drainage coming from the other houses as well. So whoever did this set up a way that the water can drain and then connect to the catch basin. I think probably 2 houses further down from the person who's complaining, but his pipe is also connected to that as well. So I just want he's been complaining about it, and it's been like that for 30 years. And I think the problem was with the issue with the sump pump shooting out to the street, Teresa, that it looked like it was a lot more water. That gentleman has put a dry well in the front of his property to reduce that flow, so there should be less water going to the street, so therefore it might look drier. But if he keeps on complaining about that pipe, I just want to make sure that it is within the village right of way. We can tell everybody to take the pipes out, but then there'll be a issue on those people's properties.
Hey, Marcus?
Yes.
Weren't we told at one point that we thought that this was originating from the top of the hill and a gentleman who perhaps connected the pipe to his basement or to a sump pump and drained it out? Is that not, does anybody know if that's happening?
No, the sump pump issue, the one next door who's complaining.
I know that. After we did that one.
Oh, yeah. What we think this water is coming from, what is in the village right of way, is actually starting at the property that Bob just mentioned. That's where it starts from, and then the water keeps on draining from one property to the other down to the catch basin. within the village right of way. So we don't see any, as far as we can tell, we don't see any roof drains leading to that. If we wanted to investigate it more, we could die in and try to trace where it's coming from. But then that gentleman who's complaining will have to disconnect his pipes as well. So I just want to bring that up too.
I'm just glad that got resolved. The water that was gushing out onto Blakely Avenue, we're going into the winter now, and that's just an accident waiting to happen once that freezes over.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad that was addressed. That's
Absolutely
important. I don't want any problems, nobody getting hurt and getting into any accidents over there.
Yep. So I just want to bring it to your attention. We'll see how it goes. If you get any complaints, at least the resident knows that we're looking into it, and we'll look into it some more and see if we need to do anything. Okay?
And I just, it seems to me that, well, if people have a sump pump in their basement, generally, and they're pumping water out, where are they supposed to pump it to? Into their...
They cannot drain it into our sewer line, because we pay to process that, and it's also
Right.
legal.
So it's got to be either pumped into their own dry well, or it's got to be a part of their property where the water can drain. Now, this sounds like some time years ago, somebody said, hey, I want to do this here. Do you mind? And they no. And maybe that's 5 owners ago. It doesn't hold up anymore.
Correct.
I don't think the village should be remedying this. I think the village should be telling everybody you have a year to contain your own water, whether that's adding another dry well or, the village shouldn't be paying for any remedy here.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
The people should be, getting rid of if they're pumping water out of the basement, they should be getting rid of it in a way that doesn't impact neighbors or the public.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Okay, but now I'm hearing tonight that perhaps this water isn't coming from anybody's basement, it's coming from the top of the hill, is that right? Last week we were saying the guy at the top of the hill might be, he was part of, I don't know, who did he work for? He worked for somebody, and he put some pipes from his basement out into the top of the street, and then he followed the pipe down, and it's impacting everybody below him. But now tonight we seem to be saying that's not the case, right?
That it looks like when we looked at it, it looks like it's an open pipe in the driveway, correct, Bob? When you saw it?
Yeah, it's really two different issues. One, the main issue was the individual pumping out his basement into the street.
Right.
There's other issues. Really, it looks like rainwater running through these pipes to catch up to a catch basin down the road, because there's no catch basins near that area. And I believe, like I said before, I believe the biggest problem you have here is that it's a low spot in the driveway between their driveway and the road, where water's puddling up, and they made this diversion many years ago, I'm assuming, just when it rains, for this water to go down the street and not puddle up in all these driveways. And it's worked, because right now there's no puddles. It just rained hard a couple nights ago, and it's dry at the foot of all these driveways are dry.
Did you say the water is coming from the Stellato property, or that's where
they happen to have the drain there, and the person that's complaining has a drain very similar in his driveway, and they all
is the person complaining the one to the left of that house?
The one that's complaining is to the left of the Stellato house, where it originates from. That's where it is. That's the start of this pipe.
I see. Okay.
And it's just a tough spot there, because the catch basins, if you go further towards Greentown Road, there's a hill going that way to catch basins. When you go to Albany Post Road, there's catch basins at that end, and they just happen to be almost on that crest, and the water has to go somewhere. And there's never been, the only complaint I've ever had there really was when one of the catch basins or one of these pipes were clogged with debris, and we would go get it jetted out to clear it, and then the problem would go away, because what would happen was, as I said before, the driveways will have puddles at the base of them. It's just a spot for all this water to collect.
Yeah. The It's
And if
pretty
you try to put these
interesting.
pipes underground, you're gonna have pumps going into all these.
It's kind of unique properties there with that steep hill behind it. I just added the contour lines on the GIS mapping site, and like right just from their house to their backyard, it suddenly goes up 20, 30 feet in some cases.
Yes.
Goes on to that's Con Edison property behind there, right?
Well,
Behind those homes.
yes, it goes up even more on the Con Edison property, but just within their property lines, it shoots up rapidly, like 20 to 30 feet in general.
Mhm.
So I'm just saying, if it becomes a big issue, like we were discussing, is the other possibility, do we tell everybody to disconnect their pipes and everybody has to maintain their own water? So I'm not saying we're up to there yet, because I know there'll be an expense to all those properties to do that, but we could discuss it more. If this gentleman keeps on complaining, we can address it at a future meeting.
He's complaining to us about the neighbor. The village has a responsibility to, for storm drains in the street and water that comes from the rain and storms. I don't think the village has a responsibility to deal with people's, the water pumping out of their basements or that's coming down the hill behind their house.
Mhm.
If it's coming down the hill and flowing out to the street, that's stormwater, and but if they're pumping it out through a pipe and then that's running down into somebody's driveway, that's got to be eliminated. That's not the rain and storm runoff. We have some responsibility to
Yeah,
for
it's just
storm
that
drains.
it's in the village right away. That's the pipe is in the
That's
village
right.
right away.
Yeah.
That's
right.
So
we
I
get
think the
involved.
person that's pumping the sump pump out needs to find another solution.
The one that used the sump pump did find a solution. In front of their house, they have the wet well. It's just the house to the right of the house, that house on Blakely. There's the groundwater pipe.
Correct.
That's the problem. That's ending up dropping into somebody else's driveway, which is still in the
You mean
village.
somebody put a pipe to direct runoff, groundwater runoff?
Well, I think that might be one of the questions to be asked to somebody is who installed those pipes? The village years ago or the homeowners? As that you're talking about 3 or 4 homes that all have these pipes run that way.
I don't think, I hope the village is not installing pipes on people's property to deal with stormwater. That's not our
Correct.
responsibility.
That's
That doesn't
correct.
mean we didn't do it, but that's not our responsibility.
That's correct. All right, so I don't want to waste, we got a lot more things to do, so I just want to bring it up. We can discuss it more at a future meeting. The next item on the agenda is just to, you're gonna, at the next meeting, Chief Johansson has resigned as police chief. So we just put on the record that it's going to happen. You accept his resignation at the next meeting. Also recognizing that we're required to have a police chief, the village board will appoint retroactively from the date of the chief resignation, the Sergeant Shane Farrow as the temporary police chief until village board makes a final determination on how to fill that position. So you're going to make that announcement at the next meeting. The next item on the agenda is hopefully it'll be a brief discussion. Is the truck traffic onto Blakely Avenue? Bless you. Is the truck traffic to Blakely? So that's something that the mayor has brought up, and we got some permission from the DOT to put signage at certain areas. So I just want to bring it up for discussion. And Teresa, if you want to bring that up, and I know Stephanie will have some comments about it as well. We can decide how they want to move forward.
Mhm. This has been an ongoing issue, going back, geez, it must be 5-6 years ago now. The time just flies. But we had resurfaced Blakely Avenue. And after that, God, it's got to be more than 5-6 years. Anyhow, so we had resurfaced all of Blakely Avenue. And we seem to be getting more and more heavy truck traffic. So, we've been trying to deal with this for years, and, we had limited the weight. We had discussed different things. We've had this discussion before, but this needs to be enforced because this really has to stop. we have some heavy duty trucks that are going on to, coming from 9A on to Blakely Avenue to access their property, which is, you know, on Blakely Avenue. So what we had hoped that they would do would use the Louisa Street exit to come off of there, because that's a truck, you know, it's a truck entrance and everything like that. So they would not be traveling the whole length of Blakely Avenue and ripping up and destroying the roads with the weight of the trucks. So that's not happening. So we really do need to enforce that. And I think the best way to enforce that is actually putting signs on 9A so that, you know, if a truck does take a right turn, then they could get fined. The only
Can I
part,
ask a question? The Greentown, they're going to Greentown Road?
yes. Mm-hmm.
The Greentown Road is roughly in the middle between 9A and John Walsh.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody's coming in the other way, they still have to travel on Blakely, just, you know, about the same distance, but they're coming from the other way. So
Right.
what does this actually do? It just takes them on from one half of Blakely to the other half of
Right,
Blakely.
and they're coming in and out of the Louisa Street exit, which is more of a truck entrance than coming through the little part of residential there.
So the issue is the portion from Welcher on 9A down to Blakely?
Yeah, mm-hmm.
They're not coming up 9A from down south.
They're using mostly the entrance off of 9A.
Yeah, because when I drive home, if I'm in the city a couple times a week, I go up to Welcher quite often to avoid the traffic on 9A.
Mm-hmm.
And quite often I see trucks, carting trucks there, and they wind up turning around and coming in off of 9A onto Blakely. Are they all
This
associated
is
with the one business that
consistent.
we're all talking about?
This
That we're all
is a
thinking about rather?
consistent problem. This business is a consistent problem. Not
Okay.
only that, we passed, Stephanie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we had passed legislation to put up a sign off of Town Road not to take a left, and the sign miraculously continues to disappear.
Wait, say that again? We passed legislation, we passed a resolution years ago.
Mhm.
That was to be at the end of Greentown Road that said no left turn. And I remember I continually asked the previous police chief why nobody was enforcing that. And I was told they're afraid of the truck drivers. And not only that, that they didn't have training and weights. And I never understood that until Marcus went out and looked at it. And with the sign that actually got put up says, what does it say, 10,000 pounds or something, Marcus?
That's correct.
So whoever authorized that sign did that for a reason, because that is not what the resolution stated. It was just no left turn, period.
That's
No left
correct.
turn. So we have two issues. The wrong side was put up, and I believe it was put up so that it didn't have to be enforced because you didn't have people trained how to weigh trucks and on and on. But secondly, I think there is also an issue of folks not wanting to stop that particular commercial establishment's trucks. And I'm not sure how that's going to change.
So on that issue alone, the signs will be changed to no left-hand turns for anything. Trucks,
Right.
cars, motorcycles, I don't care what it is.
I think
Right.
what the original intent, though, was the weight of the trucks not taking that left. That was the original conversation that we had. You know, so it's different if if a car comes out of there, but we're talking about a certain weight limit. Some of these carting trucks are they're loaded and they're coming in.
Teresa, the issue.
That's not what was passed.
That's not what was passed. What was passed was no left turns, any vehicles, no
Any
left-hand
vehicle.
turns. But
And
if you do,
I think the discussion was at the time, there was an original discussion about a weight limit. And I think it was brought
Correct.
to our attention that then you have to go and train your police officers.
Okay.
as
4
to how to
days,
stop these
4
trucks. You need to,
4 days training.
4 days training, right? And then you need weight, scales.
Correct.
You can weigh them.
Okay.
Correct.
And so I think then the discussion became, well, then just do no left turn. And maybe that way, if you give enough tickets out to the same drivers making left turns, that weight limit would be addressed because they would stop making left turns.
Okay.
That hasn't happened because it was never enforced. So with
Well,
your
there was no
discussion,
point in passing any type of legislation or anything. Like, what's the point of passing legislation if it's not going to be enforced? I'm just asking, like,
I know, well, that's my quandary here. And now, if
There's
you
no
want to
point.
do the no right turns, I guess, off of Blakely, are you limiting that to a weight? Is that a weight limit? Is that trucks? Or is
Oh,
that
that
nobody
was-
turns right onto Blakely from 9A? I'm not sure.
and there's a lot of people that turn right on Blakely going to Verplank or if they live on Blakely Avenue.
So it's a truck limit, it's a weight limit.
Yeah, so on that, Teresa, the issue would be is you're gonna have to have, again, if you have the truck limits or weight, now you're gonna need weighing equipment, and you need to train the officers to give those tickets properly to be enforced. Those are two
So what
separate
we
issues.
do? So what's the option? The option is to allow these big trucks to go over our roads and rip up the roads? Is that what the option is? I don't know if that's a viable option. Just asking.
The other option is to, if you wanna go by weight limit, then we have to train the officers to give out those tickets, or else they can issue tickets or actually be upheld in court, because you have to prove that over the whatever weight limit you're trying to say they are.
But aren't some on the registrations on some vehicles, don't they say that? Some of the, Bob might know better with the CDL vehicles.
Bob, you're muted, Bob.
Mute. Oh, there you go.
That
Okay.
was,
Is that a question?
The
Repeat
question is, Bob, do you know with this, and you know, by CDL, I know you know, is there a certain weights on the vehicles that you can say no trucks over a certain weight to be give out tickets? Is there a minimum weight on the truck, and I to say anything above this weight or more is not allowed on this road?
Well, that's a tough question because it depends on what size. You can talk about 32,000 pounds can require a certain license. But, you know, I know in the past we've always had signs that say commercial vehicles. But then that falls back on the smaller pickup trucks too.
That's another option. Good point. What you can do is no commercial no right-hand turns or left-hand turns onto Blakely with any cars that have commercial vehicles. That way you don't have to do weight limit but the commercial vehicle is on your license plate.
I think the DOT years ago objected to that, but we can contact them.
Okay.
That's a simpler option with no additional training necessary, and it can be upheld in court as long as the DOT says it's okay too.
It's just, you know what, it's just, you know, do we just let it happen and then the roads get destroyed, or do we, you know, figure out an option to this? And then, you know, one of the other problems is, I know we have a lot of the trucks that go to the sheetrock plant, and sometimes the GPS sends them that way. And then they notice that they can't. There is a sign there, just as you're going on to Blakely Avenue, for trucks. And then they end up out at the circle. You know, I feel bad for them. They're not local and they don't know. And now they're out at the circle trying to maneuver around the circle to get back out of there.
So Teresa, you make a good point. The other issue is we're going to have to talk to Pete Skill possibly, or DOT to allow signage to go on Welcher Avenue. But if they get off Welcher Avenue, come into the village, and they realize they can't make a right-hand turn, then you're right. They're going to have to go all around the circle, and they're going to tear up the circle. So we're going to have to go beyond our boundaries to let people know that they can't come into the village, and there's no right-hand turn there. So we got to figure that out as well.
Yeah, I think if the DOT could put the sign up on the Louisa Street exit, if they would work with us on that, that would be a big help too. I mean, it's not their fault. They're not local, you know, and their GPS sends them there, and then there they are.
I do.
The problem with that, I've been talking about this for years. The problem is that there's a sign on 9 that before Welcher Avenue, this exit for Indian Point. And that's misleading people who are not familiar truck drivers, because they built Louisa Street specifically for Waltz Boulevard and all that industry that's there. But all the state has to do is take down that sign and move it to the north side of Welcher Avenue, and the truck driver then would probably be getting off at Louisa. I think that would solve a lot of the problem. Now, what Nick said is true. Then it's kind of half a dozen, one half, the other, because then they're coming down Waltz Boulevard and making a left to come down and Bleakley. But I think there's less people living up there, and there's less impact of them going up there.
Yeah, what about this guy that wants to do a development over there on John Walsh Boulevard? Is that dead?
No, I spoke to him 2 weeks ago, and they're still negotiating with the owner of the property, so they're still anxious to move forward. He has not dropped out yet.
So
Bob,
then
you wanted to say?
they're going past more people. That
Yeah,
way.
Bob wanted to say something. Bob, go ahead.
Another option is, you see in a lot of the communities, I think Peekskill has it a lot also, is you can put, for no commercial vehicles on Bleakley Avenue except for local deliveries. Something to that effect, because you do have McHale's, who has all his small vehicles that are commercial trucks. You have an electric company right there that has some commercial vehicles. So you can't really hurt them because they have their businesses on those roads.
Yeah, well,
Local delivery or something to that effect, it kind of limited that. Commercial trucks are commercial trucks. There's no weight involved then.
Yeah. Well, the McHale trucks are a lot smaller. The McHale vehicles, the McHale trucks are smaller.
But some of
The
them
only other
more
one would be the
than
tree
are.
company.
Yes.
yeah.
They have,
The issue is legally, Stephanie can address that. I'll talk to Stephanie about it. The problem is truck is a truck. So unless you do a weight limit, you can't issue certain people tickets and not others. So the commercial vehicle is the best option, and it just forces everybody to come down Welcher Avenue onto Broadway and have to make a left onto Bleakley. So that's a cheaper option and the more efficient and the quicker way of doing it than the weight limit. So that's the only reason we draw the commercial vehicles, but that will affect everybody, including business, maybe homeowners that might have a private business at home, that might have a plumber or electrician. Those are commercial trucks as well. They will have to come they're going to have to come through Welcher Avenue onto Broadway. That will force all the traffic that way. So that's
so
an
it's
option.
something we have some work to do on that.
Yes.
Can I just say one quick thing? I was looking back, and originally we did buy a sign that said no left turn for trucks over gross weight of 10,000 pounds.
That's
So
the one.
originally the sign was there. So then I guess if somebody took it down, the wrong sign got it back up.
I think Bob wasn't it taken down several times? Gee, I wonder who took it.
Yeah. Maybe
was
they
taken
took it
down
down and
by
put up
us.
their own.
No, Bob, you didn't. The highway department didn't take the sign down. The sign
They
mysteriously
were taken down, but not by
down several times.
Yeah, somebody else took it down. So the idea right now is, hey, Cindy, that sign is still up. Just to let you know, the problem is that the way the law was adopted, you were nice enough to find the law. The law said no left-hand turns. No, there was no weight limit at all. Just no left-hand.
Right, not in the resolution, but the sign went up with it.
Correct,
Yeah.
and that's why it couldn't be enforced. But the sign says gross weight of 10,000 pounds or
Okay.
more.
Okay.
Yep.
It was an excuse not to enforce it, basically.
So Bob, when you have a chance, we just have to replace that sign. Where I think I emailed you a couple of days ago. When you have a chance, talk to Shane. We're gonna put 2 signs up. Both of them will say no left-hand turns. One right where the present sign is right now, outside the gate, and then maybe one across the street. That way people see it as soon as they come out, and then the police will start enforcing it.
Well, based on the email you sent me last week, it's already been done.
Oh, perfect. So the police will start enforcing it. Perfect. Thanks. Thanks, Bob.
Hey, Marcus,
Yes.
do you want to talk a little bit more about the enforcement quandary before we start doing all this work on truck routes and weight limits and commercial vehicles and DOT? And because I know there's an issue that the police seem to have with wanting some help perhaps doing this.
Well, yeah. Well,
It's a lot of work to get this done, and if it's going to be done for nothing, it's not worth doing.
Well, I talked to the police department. They're willing to enforce it. Their concern is that they've been approached by certain employees at that site and been surrounded. So the idea is that if they want to do it, they will like to get additional support from a neighboring community or state police to do that. But again, that's they will have to figure that out themselves. They're going to have to enforce it. And I told the police tomorrow they have to enforce it and figure out how to do it. So that's my position. If they need help, they need to figure out how to get the help.
Yeah, because we can't. I don't know. some of the things that happen in this village just boggles my mind, but because there's an issue like that, okay, we just can't close our eyes to it and just say, well, we're gonna be surrounded, so we're not gonna do anything. I mean, so what are we doing with enforcement? Like, just hearing this, just like, so we've allowed this to continue because 3 or 4 guys surrounded the officer, like, I'm not understanding what we're doing.
Now, like I said, this happened years ago. I don't know what the current conditions is. I talked to the police department and they said they're going to enforce it. That's all I care about at this point.
All right. And then if they need extra help or what they feel they need to do, then they need to work that out.
That's correct. I agree. Absolutely.
You know, the board isn't expecting one officer, if there's a situation like that, to go over there to address that problem. But I think once the problem gets addressed, then there will be no problem anymore.
Correct.
So, you know, but we just can't, because people bully other people.
That's not that's not the board's concern, and not to worry about it. It's going to be, the sign's going to be changed.
Because it reflects on the village. That's kind of embarrassing.
Well, the board,
It does reflect on the village, because now that goes around like, oh, well, if you surround the troops, then, you know, they're going to back down.
and like I said,
I'm a law and order type of gal.
right, absolutely. And like I said, that happened years ago. Supposedly, that's the story that I heard. It's not currently with the current officers. It happened on a previous police chief, and that time has gone by. And unless I hear something differently, the police department is going to enforce it.
Okay, so they just have to figure out how they want to do things safely. That's
correct.
Fine. You know,
That's
that's what we need to do, but we can't ignore things either, because then the thing just blossoms. So we just take care of business, and whatever the law is, and then it's taken care of. That's all.
Yes.
And that ends it. It ends that
Correct.
problem. That's all. It's nothing.
Okay, so let me recap here. Are we having further discussions, or are we
I think
starting to
we
look
need a
into
little
no
more
commercial vehicles? Are we doing weight limits?
I think we need further discussion on this, Stephanie.
I think
Okay.
we should
Decide.
rezone that industrial complex as parklands and give everybody 2 years to
And
leave.
that'll take care of
Okay.
Oh, it should be so easy.
But yeah, but guys, can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah, just that whole thing with, now, I don't know where you heard that, Marcus, that somebody said they were surrounded or whatever.
Well, they do that.
Now, they did do that, okay. But what
They
I'm
did.
saying is, when you observe somebody breaking that law, or they'll pull the vehicle over, or they follow them into where they go, and then they're approaching them on it. Are they stopping them once they observe the violation, or are they following somewhere?
Again, this is hearsay. I heard it that they made a left-hand turn after the law was adopted. It's right outside the gate.
Okay.
It was viewed by other workers, and they came back and surrounded the officer. Now, again, this happened years ago, and then there was some discussion with the police chief and Stephanie about that, and that's when nothing happened. And now the sign was put up with 10,000 limit, which that doesn't match the law. So all this is being cleaned up right now.
All right, good. Thank you. I'll say the one good thing about this board, we've cleaned up a lot of different situations that's gone on over the years. So, you know, this is just something, you know, it's just, you just can't let certain things go like that. So.
Agreed. Okay. All right, and that's the last item on the open agenda. There's a couple labor issues, contract issues for executive session, unless the board has anything else to discuss in open meeting.
You know, while Bob is still here, and Marcus, we had talked about the street lighting, on Westchester Avenue and the post office.
Oh, yes,
We
yes.
were going to, replace those and have a few, and also, what was the other, there was another one somewhere else. So, and, you know, we were going to look into replacing those this year.
Yes, Bob, the last time we spoke, we were supposed to we were trying to match the same lights and stuff like that, Bob. We was going to update the numbers. Do you get an update on that yet, Bob?
Yes, actually, I got it just the other day that the prices that I got in the past are still good today.
Okay.
They were hard to find, the posts, but we did find them, and I don't remember exactly what that number was. If you not have it, Marcus, I would trust what you said. I believe it was somewhere around $2,600 a post, and there's 4 of them that we need to replace. 2 on Westchester Avenue, 1 on Pheasants Run, and 1 in the Buchanan Post Office parking lot.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So if you get those prices together, I got the old prices. Get them down to Cindy or Sharon. We'll do a PO and then we'll get that done.
Okay, good. Just like I said, I just spoke with them yesterday.
Good time.
Good
Perfect.
timing, yeah. And I just want to mention something else. Accessory apartments. Are we reviewing those when we're supposed to each year?
As far as I know, Stephanie will correct me, that they're supposed to be re-inspected at the time of transfer of ownership. I'm trying to or is it supposed to happen
No,
every year? I'm not
there's
sure.
an annual inspection, I believe.
There's supposed to be an annual inspection. Okay, so
Yeah.
I
And
have to.
by the way, I was looking at the code book today. I found something. I don't know if you know, but accessory apartments are only for 1 or 2 people. So if there are accessory apartments with more than 2 people living in them, it's illegal accessory. It's not legal.
I'll talk to the new building inspectors. I hate to say this, but I don't think that has been done for a number of years.
Can we put it on the agenda for the next workshop to talk about accessory apartments and illegal apartments?
Sure, I'll have the building inspector, to have the new building inspectors attend that meeting if that's what the board, the mayor and the board would like to do. That's
That would
fine.
be great. One other thing I'd like to bring up, the property changed hands on, which has been a problem, Albany Post Road, White Street. And what I'm still seeing, and people are complaining about, that they're hoping that that's not going to be another car lot.
They're parking trucks behind there, commercial vehicles behind there.
Yeah.
The building department has been on it. They've been letting them know and issuing violation. There was a stop work order on the work that's happening inside the building as well. I can have them update you as well at the next meeting. The problem is they have not stated how that property is going to be used, but it could be another lot. It could be another repair shop, but that's what it's zoned for.
Well,
You know
it could be a
what?
repair
Meanwhile, he's
shop,
got
but it
building
can't be-
violations. How about we issue some violations?
Yep, absolutely.
You got building that's falling apart, pieces are falling out of the sky.
Well,
Issue some
Yeah, just to let you know, he started doing work without permits. He was issued a stop work order immediately. So waiting for information. We'll have the building inspector provide you an update on that as well at the next meeting.
Okay. And I just have one thing in our chat. Let's see, this is from Dan. I was wondering what is going on with the zombie house on Bannon Avenue. This house, it was the Brennan house on Bannon Avenue, for people who've lived here for a while. I knew the Brennans myself. And what had happened is Marion, Mrs. Brennan, had gone into a nursing home. I believe it was at the VA. And basically her whole family is deceased. Her sons are all deceased. The last son that she left it to was Kevin. Kevin is now deceased also. So this house has been vacant. It's been vacant for quite some time. And Stephanie, I know we went back and forth with the town with this also. So this house, there's no heirs now to the house. But what the biggest problem is, there's a huge lien on the house. I don't know, Cindy, if you remember the amount. I believe the lien is like 160, 170,000, just from the nursing home, plus the back taxes now. So each year the taxes continue to build, not only school, the village. So I know the town was supposed to do something at some point. They were supposed to, do something with the lien on, not with the lien, but to try to foreclose on the property. So I don't know where we are, where the status is. And that was the question, Dan. And it's sad. It was a beautiful home. It continues to sit there vacant, and
Well, a home that has not been, that was a beautiful home and hasn't had temperature control in there for years is now basically a house that's got to get torn down. It's not going to be rebuildable. It's not going to be repairable if it has, I think that's been sitting there vacant for a good 10 years.
Oh, easily, yeah, yeah.
So, 10 years, I mean, that cannot be, it's probably beyond repair.
Well, I know the pipes had frozen at one point in the house.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tear, it becomes a tear down.
Yeah, this is gonna be another house like White Street. I think it's.
Well, it could. Now, there's a house by me over here that an older woman passed away this past year. It's been vacant. It's in foreclosure. It could sit for years. It could turn into that. Right now, they're still running the heat at a low temperature, and they're, it's a house that could be salvaged. If it sits like that for 5 years, it could be another one. And
But,
just make more around the village, but,
The problem is with this Brennan house, there's so many liens on the house.
Yeah.
First of all, it's in disrepair, but then the liens.
and the liens become worth more than the house.
Yeah, so that's the status. That's what we know of that house. Cindy, I don't know if you had anything to add on to that with the Brennan house?
No, you said it all.
Okay, all right, thank you. So that's what we know. Maybe we can, see if somebody can contact the town to see if they're going to do
The town has a lien on it, and do we have a lien on it for our taxes?
Yes. Yes.
The school tax, yeah.
Yeah, but the problem is you do a tax lien sale, nobody's picking that up with a $100,000 social services lien, a nursing home lien. You know what I mean? That's not how and that's probably what happened to the town. With the White Street house that we eventually took down, there was also a $100,000 social services lien, and the county just refused to respond at all. And but because it was in such disrepair and dangerous, we have the ability in our code to take down a dangerous, And George was involved, and we went out and surveyed it, and we did our notices, and we noticed the next of air and all of that, and we got to take it down. In this particular case, maybe it is that dangerous. I don't really know. I really don't know the condition of it. But I can say that doing a tax lien isn't going to solve our problems because nobody's going to pick up that lien. Because you pick up the county lien too.
Stephanie, the state zombie law does that play into it at all, or?
Well, my understanding of the zombie law, and I haven't read it in years, was that they put that into effect primarily because these banks were holding these properties and doing nothing but letting them come into disrepair. And so the law went into effect to say the lenders themselves had to keep these houses in repair. I don't think any of them did. I shouldn't say that, but there are zombie properties everywhere. I can look it up again, but I think that the onus was on the bank and the lender.
Yeah, and
Stephanie, you're 100% correct.
Yeah, because, banks were just letting them go. In my neighborhood, we have a few, and I know they have like $600,000 mortgages, and the banks are doing nothing. They don't even mow the lawn. So I'm not even sure who's enforcing it, but unless there's a mortgage on that property, I don't think it's a zombie law property.
Just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, no, it's a good question.
Structurally, I'm not an engineer. George is the engineer. But structurally, like usually if there's a problem structurally with a home, you'll see the roof have a problem. You'll see the windows start popping out. Basement, there's really, I don't think I think the door is still open on the house, honestly. I don't think it's secure. But structural wise,
Hard to say.
Hard to say until somebody, an engineer gets in there, but it's not our property, so we can't, it's kind of like in the twilight zone, that property, unfortunately, but if it gets to be a dangerous property, then we're gonna have to step in. Okay. So I just, before we go into executive session, I just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. You know what? There's much for all of us to be grateful for in these difficult times, but we have to stay strong. And 2020 is coming to an end, and we just have to hope for better in 2021. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Discuss personnel issues.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, give it a couple minutes to take a little break, and then we'll be right back.